So I first discovered your project for Tiny, a story about living small, while I was on Kickstarter. And tell us about how you began the campaign. I know it was December 2011 or so when you started it, or a little bit
Yeah, I think
before?
we started it sort of late October and then ended December 15th was our last day.
Okay, so what types of things were you doing ahead of time to plan it? Because you've done a beautiful job at getting awareness out about it. I mean, so many people they make a video, they put it on Kickstarter, and then they are very passive about it. And it seems like you were both very proactive about it. What were your strategies, either ahead of time or while the campaign was in motion?
Well, let Merete answer this one because she's the mastermind, the architect of the Kickstarter campaign.
I mean, I think one of the really lucky things about our project is that we had sort of the tiny house community there, ready to kind of help us get the word out. And in the tiny house community, there's a really vibrant online community of so many different blogs and Facebook pages and things like that. So I think, before we launched the Kickstarter campaign, we really tried to reach out to editors of blogs and create personal relationships with people that could help us get the word out. And so that was one of the ways that we did that. And then also reaching out to anyone else that we thought kind of had a stake in the message that we're trying to get out there. So any kind of environmental blog, design blogs, architecture blogs, any other subject matter that was touched by this story, we reached out to. And we did a lot of, for Film Courage as well, we did a lot of kind of guest blogs and, making sure that we could provide great photos and great content to kind of offer to these people and say, this is the story that we have going on. Use whatever you want, and help us kind of get the word out there. And I think that helped a lot. We got, we ended up getting picked up by, I think, Oprah.com and, Mother Nature Network and a few bigger blogs that really helped us.
Sundance Channel blog and the Kickstarter blog actually was huge. So it's interesting. Kickstarter itself is a platform for discovery. I think you found out about us through Kickstarter, but just by putting it on Kickstarter, we actually a whole new group of people became aware of the project, which was really exciting. But I would definitely, I guess, advise, like if I were to give advice to a similar, like another indie film that was trying to raise money on Kickstarter, I would definitely suggest that don't do it right off the bat. Wait a little while, develop your plan and make some connections, and then also get a lot of the media to accompany your campaign, like Merete was saying, with like great pictures and videos and things like that, because it helps sell the story a lot more. And plus, if you show up basically with some stuff that you can show and point to and say, we've already done this, or I don't know, it helps people with confidence knowing that it's going to get made. And
And I think too, the message with Kickstarter, it's not necessarily so much asking for money. It's more about like, look at this great thing we're doing that you can be a part of. And so I think it's really kind of tapping into that inspiration factor. And as much as people can kind of do that, I think it will be successful.
Mm-hmm. One last, I guess, piece of advice, probably, so one thing that we did that maybe I would do differently next time is just our rewards. We didn't anticipate how many people would be donating, and so some of our rewards took so much time or energy to fulfill that, and for us it was okay because we were still a relatively small project and campaign, but for some of the larger films out there, they can find that they spend hours, just fulfilling days, fulfilling Kickstarter rewards, so it's just something to keep in mind for filmmakers, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm wondering too, when things weren't maybe happening, or maybe you didn't have days like that, but I know for our campaign there were days where it was just dead in the water and it's like, okay, time's running out. What did you do to try to drum up noise about the project?
I mean, I think, whenever there was sort of a lull, it would be like, okay, I remember before we started the project or the campaign, I wrote down a list of every single blog or mailing list or newsletter or personal contact. I mean, down to like the colleges that we went to, just like the alumni networks. I mean, any community that I could think of to reach out to, and was kind of just crossing them off the list. So if, whenever we hit a lull, I was kind of like, okay, so what new blog can I write? Or, it's helpful because my background is in writing, so it was easy for me to kind of like figure out a new angle and write a blog. But it was kind of just like, okay, what else can I put out there just to keep putting stuff out?
Yeah, I think definitely the plan about, having a regular sort of schedule of blogs. So even if we knew that in advance that there would be 4 or 5 blogs that we're already willing to either write about us or let us do a guest blog, we would say, okay, well, can we do it this day, because we didn't want to have 5 come out in one day and then have a week where there wasn't any, so we tried to pace it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's important to remember too that it's great to start small. I mean, a lot of the press coverage that we got started off being really small kind of local blogs and newsletters that someone would see it and be like, oh, that's cool, and then they'd write about it for their thing, and it kind of got the reach became greater and greater. But we started pretty small, and I think it's not like you need to have a contact with the New York Times in order to make a successful campaign. You can start with who you know.
Sure. What about for people, though, that maybe either aren't willing to write or aren't a skilled writer, such as yourself? I mean, a lot of people approach us, and I think sometimes they're afraid because they know people might read it and they don't know if it'll come across correctly, or, What would you say to someone that has that fear of writing? We've dealt with so many people like that.
I mean, I would say that there's more ways than just words to tell a story. So I mean, if someone's really visual, or maybe someone could like do a cartoon, or I don't know. I mean, there's so many different ways to get a message across that doesn't have to necessarily be in the written word. I mean, it could be music, or just really kind of using creativity to think of different methods.
I mean, if they're filmmakers, presumably they could do video blogs or something like that. But I would also say that I think any film is going to be enhanced by having a good writer attached to it. So it's almost worth, I mean, maybe they don't have access to a writer at the moment, but that's kind of something that I would think about in advance. It's just like, okay, well, there's going to be a lot of things that need to be written, from the script to blogs to promotional materials. It's good to have at least somebody you can rely on if you're not comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
And of your under 200 backers, it was like, what, 196 or something like that? Were they people that you knew? Were they from your college, or were they family and friends, or who were they?
I'd say maybe 20 to 30% were people that we knew, either friends who gave sort of like $10 a piece, or family members who were able to give a little bit more. But I'd say, I mean, a good bulk of the people who donated, I think, were either part of the tiny house community, or were excited for environmental reasons, or had kind of found us, through one of those blogs.
Yeah, I mean, I might even be kind of a high estimate.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but maybe 20 to 30% of them, maybe 20% of the money, I think, might have been from people we know, because people we knew, we had a few large donations from, family or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, I think I was surprised at how many people we didn't know, honestly.
And I mean, strangers who were backing sort of higher levels, which I never expected, to have a stranger sort of back at the $500 level or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which was,
really, it was really great. And from all over the world, Australia, lots of people from Europe. Mm-hmm. And I know it was nice. And, the interesting thing is when we first launched the Kickstarter campaign, we had 300 fans on Facebook or something like that. And just as a gauge of, we were relatively still new as a project, and if we had even waited 6 months from that point, I think it would have been a different story, as far as we would have had even more people we didn't know, because it's all about, I mean, it's amazing what you can do with the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Really.